Welcome to Podaholiks. My name is James Piecowye, and this is PowerWorks with Glenn Power from PowerWorks Automotive. Well, you know it from the title. We're going to be talking about cars. We're going to be talking car repair, all of the important stuff on your mind, and essentially, we want to keep your ride rolling. And no one better to do that than Glenn and his team at PowerWorks Automotive. Glenn, we were just talking, actually, and we were talking pre-show a little bit about one of the cool features of what you guys are doing. And is this, I don't know if this is just a Dubai thing or if they're doing this in the UK and other places, but really making a concerted effort to have a pickup service. And there's two questions here as we lead into things. And by the way, it's great to see you. And we're on Wi-Fi this week. You were talking, it's almost like going to the doctor's office, and the reluctant patient who heads into the doctor's office when you do a pickup of a vehicle, who says, oh yeah, I'm bringing in for the oil change, or I'm bringing in to get a look at the shocks. And oh yeah, by the way, there's this really weird squeak when I'm driving and I take a left-hand turn and I goose her and going around a corner trying to get a little wheel spin. It makes kind of a shearing sound. This is an interesting byproduct or an interesting addition to that whole collection process when you send a team out.
Yeah, 90% of our cars that come in are obviously delivered by the owner, right? By the customer. So the customer brings the car in and they'll say, okay, yeah, I've got a booking for a service. Yeah, shake hands, nice. Well, not shake hands these days, but nice to meet you. And oh, while you've got it in, do you mind having a look? I've had this problem, or and it's one of those things where, a bit like, I don't go to the doctors, but when you do, it's like, oh, I've got this, and this.
Yeah, you want to have a checklist. You just keep a checklist because you want to maximize.
Make it worth going. Make it worth going. Right, so what's the point? So it's difficult now with the recovery service where, we arrange a time for the car to be picked up, and the reason we're doing the recovery service is just keep people out of contact with other people, just to try and help minimize that contact. So we do that, and the recovery driver takes the vehicle on the back of the truck and drives it away. But I suppose it exacerbates the problem now is the fact that these vehicles haven't been driven for potentially a month or two, especially in the case of teachers. Teachers have been, just like yourself, nursery teachers were the first ones out where the nurseries were closed. And a couple of weeks later, they closed the schools and other educational establishments. And it's like, these cars might not have been driven for 2 months plus. Yeah. So, okay, it's due a service on the schedule, but what else has it got? The tyres have got a flat spot. The brake's starting to bind. Have you got a problem with an oil leak or an AC issue or a brake? There's endless. And because we're doing this collection and delivery to keep people from contacting other people or minimize it as best we can, we're not having that customer interaction face to face, and it's quite challenging to know. The last thing you want to do is send somebody's car back having serviced it, and then they get in it and say, well, it wasn't doing this before the service.
Yeah.
Although that was 2 months ago, the last time they drove it because of the lockdown, so they're technically right. But it's making it a challenge. It's interesting, and I don't know. We've always offered collection and delivery as a matter of convenience for a lot of people, but typically that person will have driven that vehicle the day before. So they may well say, oh, well, there was this and there was that. But now, because the collection and delivery is always a matter of course, it's different to let's say you call me, James, and say, look, I want to get the car in next week, but I'm flat out lecturing. Can you arrange to pick it up? No problem. We'll have a chat there and then. I'm coming to pick it up, and you might mention a few things on your hit list.
Yeah.
But calling me now when it's collection and delivery is the norm because people can't get out there to get it done, or they don't want to. It's just, okay, the car's getting picked up and I haven't driven it for a couple of months, so I don't know, and I'll leave it to them and let them check it. And unfortunately, we don't know how long that piece of string is.
Yeah.
And that's the question, right? What do we do? So all our cars now are pretty much, people are getting a really good deal. They're getting free collection and delivery, and they're getting an absolute comprehensive inspection regardless of the service level they require, because we need to be sure.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. I mean, I've got one of those vehicles sitting right now. It's got a cover on it because, we have two vehicles. We're working from home, my wife and I, so we do minimal driving anywhere because we pretty much don't leave the house. One vehicle's getting used, the other one's sitting. I actually was looking at it today. It's been, it's the Jeep with the soft top. It's got no windows in it. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what? I think I got to put the windows back in. And she's like, yeah, and then I'm thinking, when did we last drive that vehicle, by the way? I'm legitimately can't remember if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And all I'm thinking is I got
to get them on rotation.
Yeah. I was thinking exactly the same thing. And it's amazing what you start noticing. And this has got to be a global phenomenon. In fact, I'm seeing it more and more across news feeds, things to look at with your cars. We've already done that show and we talk about it every week. So I think it's kind of great that people are talking about it now. But the number of people whose vehicles have just been sitting and they've got stuff going on with them. I even noticed it one of mine. I noticed it the other day. We talked about putting some cardboard under and I've got some bricks and I just noticed the other day, I pulled the car out and I got, whoa, what's that little drop there? And where's that little drop coming from? Yeah. And it's like, oh man. And all I can put it down to is, I check the oil. Oil seems to be okay. I'm looking at all the other lows, and I think it is an actual little oil leak. And I drive an old Wrangler, right? So but the thing is, it's come out of nowhere. And it's just, I put it down to my car is not getting its normal amount of mileage put onto it. And things are starting to dry out or loosen off or who knows what. It's amazing.
Yeah. You've got metal components which aren't major components like head and block of an engine. There's nothing more fundamental to an engine than that, and they aren't heating up and expanding. Yeah. And they aren't cooling slowly to shrink back down and contracting. And between them, there's gaskets and seals.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're sort of taking this in its basic or most basic form, but they need to be in use. They need to be getting up to temperature. They need oil circulating on them to keep them soft and supple. And we don't get that for 2-3 weeks. All of a sudden, it's a problem. And now, to intensify that, it's hot again outside.
Yeah.
So you don't even get that. It's not even like you get that little bit of. And I've always imagined it this way. And I honestly put my hands up and say I don't know if there's any science behind this, but this is how I've always imagined it. If you take I can tell you that 90% of the vehicles I see here have an oil leak of some description. Yeah. Certainly the European ones, less so than the Japanese vehicles.
Why do you figure the European cars are getting these oil leaks? What's causing that?
Well, one of the things I think, because compared to the UK, where my other half of my career has been, we didn't see many oil leaks at all. Now I know I worked in the VW dealership, but those same vehicles leak oil here.
Yeah.
Like all the others. There's nothing more, nothing less, just the same. And I just put it down to the fact that, and like I say, this is just pure speculation and just using logic and expanding on it. But I think if you take an engine that's sat out in the sun and it's 40 degrees out there now every day, and it's going to be up to 50, and it's not going to start dropping now till October, right? So before you've turned the key, the oil's relatively thin. The oil's 50 degrees. That's thin. So then if you've got a slight tolerance or gap in the seal or gasket where it sits between two components, there's a slight gap there with thin oil that's going to get out. You don't get that time of the oil warming up and getting thinner at the same time of the metal components warming up and expanding and closing little gaps and seals becoming lubricated and starting to swell up and fill the gaps again. You don't have that luxury because there's no cold oil. You start a car that hasn't been started for a long time, but the oil's still going to be 45, 50 degrees.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's obviously the fact that we have a different quality of fuel here. It's not as refined. We get a lot more carbon deposits because there's less the air is hotter, so it's less dense. There's less oxygen in every, pound for pound with air here than in a cooler climate. So the fuel doesn't burn as well. You get more carbon in the oil. That causes internal damage, so to speak, on seals and components. So there's a lot of other factors to it. But, you add the fact that it's so hot outside to an engine that's not been run for a long time. And, the oil is less, well, the term isn't great, but it's oiliness. Yeah. The oiliness of the oil and the viscosity of the oil is completely different at 50 degrees ambient temperature than it is at 20 degrees ambient temperature. So you've got less protection, if you like, from an oil when you start the engine from quote unquote cold, having not been run for a couple of weeks. The oil's hot and it's run. The viscosity is super thin and it's running to the bottom of the engine, and a lot of the seals and gaskets on the top and the components on the top aren't necessarily lubricated as well as they could be. So there's a lot of issues with having cars lying around for a while, and it's one of the reasons that I think we've got to have a preparedness to what's coming. Like when everybody does go back to normal, it's going to be straight. And I'm interested to see how people take the public transport, how people view public transport after this. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be in our lives for a long time, wearing masks and gloves on public transport, which I'm fine with that. That's no problem. You know, it's pretty much the norm in a lot of East Asian countries, right? You see people wearing masks on public transport, and that's great. As a courtesy, it's fine. But will it push people not to use it? So will that increase the usage of cars, personal cars, carpooling, chauffeurs, taxis, things like that?
Yeah, it opens up an interesting dilemma, especially with mass transit and social distancing required. So I've taken the metro in the past and I've been sardined in. There's no sardining right now. I actually, there's an interesting one that I never considered. And you and I have both gone to visit Andrew Thomas, digitalnexa.com, the DigiGeekster, Tech Talk, all of the different ways to get in touch with him. You and I have both gone to the building that his office is located in. And if you've ever tried to get up in that tower, I mean, first of all, you wait for a bank of 6 elevators, and it seems it's always the same 2 that come. And then you get it's kind of like a Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey circus act. How many people can you get into the elevator? And I always hope that there's a guy with food in case that thing breaks, because I want to know that we've got something to eat. You know, of course, it's Ramadan. We're recording right now, so that would be a misnomer. But I'm seeing now pictures of elevators where they're only allowing 4 people in the elevators, and you got to stand in the corners, and and I'm thinking, hold on a second, how is that ever going to work if I'm going to visit Andrew and it's back to close to normal and they're only letting 4 people in the elevator at a time? You're going to have to arrive at that elevator an hour early, because there's just no way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the only good thing is, I suppose, for this situation that we're in is for us here in the UAE and in Dubai in general, in particular, we've been told 30% of attendance for office staff. Yeah. But those lifts at Andrew's place are a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, they need a fireman's pole or something.
I just don't get it, because I get in and this is actually a complaint I have with lifts in the UAE in general, because they're computer driven and whoever has set them up has not put them on a demand system. It's not like they all are, some of them are going to certain ways, or they're staggering them as they come down. You got 6 lifts, 6 of them could be coming down and going up. It never seems to work like that. So I don't know what they've done, but clearly whoever's setting them up electronically doesn't know what they're doing. And
I also don't like the fact that you can't obviously see where the stairs are. Yeah. I'd happily use, I know it's a fair few floors, but I would happily take the stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll at least take them coming down.
Yeah, in Manchester Airport in the UK, for the terminal that Emirates fly out of when we're coming back here, if we've been back to the UK, we have to take a lift, and it's always queuing out the car park for people to get on it. And obviously an airport, everyone's got a suitcase, right? Yeah. And this terminal is the international terminal, so it's long haul, so everyone's got a big suitcase plus carry on. So you can't get on these lifts, and they're huge. The lifts are vast, but they're huge. So I always take the stairs. Always take the stairs with the suitcase. It makes I don't care, because I can't stand waiting for a lift. And then especially if you're in that awkward situation where you think, can I get on? And you get on, and then the weight limit's over, or the doors won't close, and it's like everyone's like looking at you, burning a hole in the back of your head. So I think we've got into that talking about mass transit, but I am interested. I think for people like us that are repairing cars, I think it's probably going to be a time there's going to be a massive shift, put it that way. Now, whether people go into renting cars or whether people actually go into buying a cheap car, I mean, now is a great time to buy a car. There's so many people, for us in the society that we're in, there's so many cars for sale.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I wanted to talk to you about that. First you've got the used car market that is going crazy. And then I drive by the auto mall and I'm taking a look at some of the used cars that are being offered by Al Futtaim, and I'm looking and go, man, they're flush. Like that auto mall, the one that's close to me over at Festival City, is overflowing with vehicles. And then I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, hold on a second. People haven't been buying cars now for a few months. I mean, not on their regular, the regular schedule that people might be doing. Ramadan's sales have come in. I don't know if people are rushing out to cash in on that either. And then I'm looking at some of the stats out of the U.S., and I just use it as an example because there was an article about it where you've got a whole ship that is essentially sitting off the coast in the west coast of the U.S., and it's full of SUVs and stuff and these are Nissans. So I think what does it say it's full of? It's literally full of these Rogues and Infiniti sedans and other things, Armadas, that it can't get into port because there's no room to store the cars because the dealers don't want to take delivery because they haven't moved any cars and they've got all their old stock and you've got the new stock coming in. So I'm looking at this going, this is you would think has got to be a windfall because dealers want to get rid of their old stock. They want to get in the new stock. None of it can really come in and prices have got to be falling. And then you've got, as you said, you got the used car market where people are being forced to relocate. We're in an expat situation. People are forced to relocate. And what's the first thing they got to get rid of is their car.
You've got to sell it,
And if the new car market is going to be cutting prices, the used car market's got to be in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, the used car market, I'm very familiar with what we do here because we see a lot of, obviously, people buying used cars and bringing them in for us to check before they buy them.
Yeah.
But new cars is, I think it's fair to say factually that new car sales are probably as low as they could have ever imagined and worse right now. I think Shazad Sheikh, easy for me to say, the brown car guy, he did an article and a bit of a video about how globally there's 39% decline year on year.
Yeah.
And last year wasn't exactly a bumper year. So, you take it back to like a peak year, maybe 2009, 10, 11, one of those years where there was a lot of incentives to buy new cars to help these manufacturers out after the crash of 2008, and then things started to pick up again. You go back to those times, and I bet you're probably 60% down.
Imagine.
And it's crazy because these just to turn the lights on in some of these showrooms is ridiculous. And this is where I think ultimately it takes as long as it takes to build a car, and you have to mass produce them. We've known that since Henry Ford started doing it. That's the only way to make them economical to produce and to buy. And if you can't sell them, if no one can buy them, you can't sell them, and you can't make any more. So we have to mass produce cars, and that takes as long as it takes. So there will always be an issue of stock, and I think they'll always be on the side of oversupply. But I think that might have to change. And the way it was going before this happened, sort of contradictory to how we're talking or going to go on to talk now, is people were seeing cars as a luxury.
Yeah.
People were going more towards public transport and car shares and things like that. But now, I can't see how you would do that.
Yeah.
Right? The public transport is fantastic. It's great. Don't get me wrong, but you can't safely go and put you or your family members in a carriage with another 50 people where you've only got, if you've got arm's length between you, that's amazing, but it's never that. Like you say, it's packed. so people now then, does that mean people go back to looking to get cars? And I think any new car manufacturer and any franchise of a manufacturer, they really should be saying, look, surely we can't hurt any more than we are. Just give them away.
Yeah.
Give them away. Get the money back in. Okay. Get the money back in service and maintenance.
Yeah. Well,
give them away.
That's one of the things I keep thinking. Again, I'm looking around at some of the vehicles that are out there, and I know what vehicles I like to drive and that, and I'm thinking, okay, the dealer has brought in XYZ number of these cars over the last 5 years. How many of them from some of these, 2-year-olds are sitting out in the field still with, covered in plastic and waiting to be, made, whatever we call them, prepped for delivery, that they're sitting on, that they're, get rid of them at cost. Like, guys, you got to start moving some of these vehicles, at least get your money back. Even at 1%, but just start moving them, and I don't see them doing that yet. But they just I can't believe it. I really can't believe it.
And
I'm selfishly thinking I just want another vehicle, right? So I'm thinking of it from a selfish perspective. But the other side,
at the end of the day, there's a reason that it's not a universal truth, of course, but there's a reason that it's not everybody in the United States hates the fact that the government bailed out the big motor manufacturers there.
Yeah.
That people realize that it's a huge part of what America's known for. It's a huge part of their economy. In 2008, the government needed to save them, right? So instead of getting to that position again, incentivizing people to take a new car, and whether you do it in the situation like, we've talked about them in the past with Audi and Porsche, where you can pay a fixed fee, like a subscription fee, and it's tiered.
Yeah.
And you can go and go and drive any of the number of cars at any point during a month for X amount of dollars per month. Okay, do it. In these days where people aren't necessarily mortgaging houses now, people aren't necessarily buying houses because of economic uncertainty and the amount of down payment and stuff that people need. Cars are going to be the biggest investment people make, and that's been the case for probably 15 years now.
I think,
and people are now looking at ways of not having to do that.
Yeah,
and they're looking at renting cars now. The problem with doing rentals is it's not very. There's not many G-Wagons that you see on a rental lot.
Yeah.
And there's not many Porsche Panameras on a rental lot, and there's not many Ferrari.
Yeah.
At all on a rental lot for long-term rental, right?
Yeah.
You can get your supercars for the day or whatever, but there aren't many of those. And these manufacturers, they need to look at it. General Motors is a good example, actually, because if you take the whole range of General Motors, you can go from a little Chevy Aveo all the way up to an Escalade.
Yeah.
Where you can get a Chevy Aveo, you can sell thousands of those to the rental companies, no problem. But you're not going to sell many Escalades.
No.
But the Escalade it's the flagship. It's what people know. It's it's the aspirational vehicle, right? And I don't get it. They need to get them out there. There must be thousands of them around the world sat there. Like you say, there's some on ships. Can't get in.
Exactly.
Give them away. Give people a reason to own these cars, and that will stimulate the market. That will stimulate the trade, and that will keep manufacturers producing, because manufacturers need to get rid of the cars that they've just built to build new ones. If they can't build new ones, then nobody got a job.
Yeah. Well, I think in the 5 months that we've had things going on now, really, we're recording this podcast. It's May, and I think we've got this rapid shift now. We've gone, and I think it's going to do our heads in, because we've gone from, think Industrial Revolution. What was all that about? It went from rural to urban, and now we're in a situation where our urban lifestyle, congestion, high density housing, all of these things, they're in existence, and we're starting to realize, hold on, the high density, this is causing some issues. So what do we need? Potentially, we want to, and this goes totally against what we're espousing for environment and things, but we want people to maybe live outside the city. We want them to maybe commute into the city, but now we're in a situation where you don't have to commute every day. What if we have you commute once a week, and you come in once a week for the in-office stuff? The rest of it you do from home. You have the vehicle to do that. And that's the way you live. And I guess it's kind of a little bit more like an English lifestyle, I mean, except for the folks who live in London. But otherwise, whenever I talk to folks like yourself, everyone talks about the village they came from. And, those villages don't tend to have high density housing. I mean, you're going to have some estate housing, and you're going to have some rural housing, but you don't have an apartment building like we're used to here in Business Bay, 30 stories sticking up in, the Lake District. That's probably pretty uncommon. So it's almost like we're backing up, but in order to do that, we're gonna have more vehicles, which I think is kind of cool potentially, but they're going to be driven less, so it kind of offsets the pollution. But I think it's that this whole thinking process has to be redone again. And one of the things that caught my attention again here in the UAE was the leasing stuff that Toyota's got going, and I was looking at, why would I go and buy a vehicle, even a Yaris? They're 1,092 dirhams is the monthly lease. And I'm looking at, you get all your service, you get all your insurance, you get all your registration, you get maintenance system for your fines and tolls, 24-hour breakdown recovery, passenger accident insurance, relief from administrative burdens, low upfront payment, 24/7 call center. I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't I lease a car? It's like, this has everything built into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's exactly right. But they tend to be the economical models. You can. I'm sure you can, and there are lease plans. And in the UK, we were always with the dealership. We had varying different types of plan. I think the more popular one was a PCP, which was basically you end up with 3 years of payments after zero down payment. You have 3 years of payments, and at the end of it, there's the value of the vehicle when you bought it left to pay, and you pay that as a balloon payment, or you give them the vehicle back and then you take a new one and carry on.
Yeah.
So you never actually own the vehicle, but what that does is it gets the vehicle sold out on the road for people to see and maybe buy one as well. It then guarantees that in 3 years' time they're going to have a fully agency maintained used car to sell.
Yeah.
And that's very, very important. And for us at VW, we had our sort of entry level one was obviously the Fox and the Up. Towards the time I left was the Up, and then all the way through to a Touareg and Phaeton. And they were all available. Everything in between, they were all available on that, and they were relatively affordable. And I do think seriously that whether this becomes let's say General Motors plant is in a township or on the edge of a city, and one of their plants has produced 20,000 vehicles of an excess, so they've got a stockpile of 20,000 vehicles. Would it not make sense to give that half of that stock to the local township or the local city government and say, look, these can be used by city officials or medical personnel or distribute them as they will. You can use them for school teachers. You can assign them to shared vehicles like we get with the e-car things over here.
Yeah, which becomes
got to be somewhat
that whole
somewhere they can put these vehicles, right?
Yeah. That whole e-car thing, that's a whole other option, isn't it? You almost think that those guys want to ramp it up because, again, with all the stuff we're talking about and limited usage and the way we change that, you want to have those just parked everywhere.
I suppose the problem now is that, let's say I've got COVID-19, I'm suffering with it, and I get in one of those things asymptomatically, and then I'm coughing all over the steering wheel afterwards, or I don't even know I've got it. I'm not got any symptoms, like say asymptomatic, and I'm touching my face, and then I'm touching the steering wheel, and then I park it up and someone else gets in it. So that's why these guys are going to have a problem. But if you can allocate, obviously down the line we're going to get through all this mess with this virus, but at that point there's got to be some kind of plan for manufacturers. How do they get through this? A lot of people have done very little business for the last few months across the whole of the world. So who in their right mind is going to go and invest in a new car?
Yeah, I know that exactly. And so it becomes an interesting one. It's funny because I was talking with Colin saying, look, and it's funny because I'll preface this, and my wife said, Colin knows you, right? So and this was the preface, because she's looking at me and she's going, really? Colin knows you, right? And so I said to Colin, I'm really thinking I would like to get a new used Wrangler, but I'm looking creamsicle colored, that creamsicle orange kind of, Wrangler. And he says, are you ready to buy like today? And I'm going, maybe. And my wife looks at me and goes, he knows you, right? He knows that you're thinking of this, and you'll probably never do it as long as Glenn can keep fixing your old Wrangler. So you know that he knows this, right? And I'm going, oh, no, if he finds one, maybe, maybe. And she goes, really? You think that's going to happen, but the point being, he's pretty confident that if he starts looking, that there's going to be a creamsicle colored Wrangler between 2016 or 2015 and today that's out there. And it's like, why would, the used car market in a sense becomes pretty brilliant. And when you start talking about the auction sites, I drove by one, if you're on Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Road in the UAE heading towards Rak in Sharjah, there's a big auction site over on the right. It's flush with vehicles. There's one over in Warsaw in Dubai, flush with vehicles. I mean, I'm looking at these going, where are all these vehicles coming from? That's my big thing.
I just think to myself, when I see those places, I drive past them a lot. I just think to myself, where are they going?
Yeah.
Where are they going? Like where's the market for this? And, I think it's time that, unfortunately, I'm not some sort of crazy post-truth idealist or anything like that, but it is time that big businesses realize their responsibility to themselves, in that they just need to get out there. But, we talked about the issues again, we go back to General Motors, where there was a bit of almost a Luddite sort of issue there, where the motor builders, the engine builders were thinking, oh man, what we're going to do now? They're just going onto electric vehicles. What do I do?
Yeah.
That is a genuine worry. Well, if there was ever a jolt to a market that would shift it that way, that now's the time, right? If there's ever a time to say that we need to stop making these cars because we don't get rid of them, let's stop making the new ones.
Yeah.
But that does not deal with the stockpile, and that's my point. Is
exactly
get them out there, get them used, and make it that, at least they're not just going to rot under a cover on a patch of sand somewhere. That they're going to be sold and used, and whether you make money on them or you don't, they're out there. The work that went into them wasn't for nothing. And if you go into a VW dealership expecting to walk out with a Polo, but you figure out after talking to the sales exec or whatever it is that you can actually walk out with a Golf or a Tiguan or something bigger, then who doesn't want that? Exactly. You can put that down to any brand. You go into Nissan expecting to come out with a Maxima, and all of a sudden you can come out with a Patrol.
Yeah,
because they need to do that. They're the ones that the big higher end vehicles, the more premium ones, are going to be the ones that they struggle to sell. But they're the ones that are going to inspire people to want to have them.
Yeah.
You don't look at somebody necessarily driving a Nissan Sunny and think, "Oh, great, I want one there." But you might look at somebody driving a Nissan Patrol and think, "Oh, that'd be nice to have one of those."
Have you ever met anyone who aspires to own a Nissan Sunny?
No, exactly.
No,
that's right. That's the problem.
Hey, I had a good one.
Problem, right?
There was a good one, and it was in our notes from weeks ago, and it's not in the notes now. But I was talking to my wife about this one, and it goes back down to Teslas, and folks are buying Teslas and this, that. And there was some American company who'd come up with an electric car, essentially, and I can't remember the name of the company, but the size of the electric car is essentially an Escalade. Like when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at an Escalade, and it's big, it's heavy, it has giant batteries in it so that it gets a crazy mileage, and it also four-wheel drive. It's got motors on each wheel, so it drives beautifully, but you could also go crazy in it if you really wanted to. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, you know what? I would buy one. Heartbeat, because I want a big car, right? And suddenly we've gone down to smaller things, and then you've got cars, and that if we're going down the electric route and I don't have to pay for petrol, why wouldn't I want to have an Escalade? I mean, why wouldn't I want to be driving around in this thing? And I'm thinking, it's got to be a Tesla killer, because why do I want to own a little car? And not that they're little, but why do I want to own a car when I can be driving this 9-seater and get the kids in and be comfortable? And
cars have gone like mobile phones. I remember when everyone went with the first mobile phones in the sort of late 90s, where they were obviously big, and then I remember there was a girl at our school who had, I think it was a Nokia 8210, which was like tiny.
Yeah.
everyone aspired to have this tiny phone, which you can't even play Snake on it.
Yeah.
It's so small. You got in text, it's so small. But now they've now it's the bigger the better.
Yeah.
So you pay more for a Galaxy Plus or an iPhone Pro Plus. You pay more. It's bigger, and cars have gone the same way because they've become. I put cars and mobile phones now, especially in the Tesla category, and this isn't to sort of make any sort of judgment about how they're just a novelty or anything like that. But I do think that Teslas in particular have become like an iPhone in that they're an accessory to people now.
Yeah.
And I think once people realize that the actual capabilities of it, you mentioned there, so the 4 motors, so 1 per wheel on a four-wheel vehicle, that has great implications for power, great implications for application of power and delivery of power and torque. I mean, phenomenal. 100% torque instantly from an electric motor. Right?
Well, they said this thing can pull a boat beautifully. They said, you want to pull a boat? Yeah. You got the right machine.
But it also makes ice and snow and sand and mud driving so much easier for the average driver. So modern vehicles now, internal combustion vehicles that have an engine, a transmission, transfer box, front and rear differentials, whatever it may be on a 4-wheel drive vehicle, they have electronic controls to control braking and control power delivery to each wheel. Yeah. But that cannot be because there is a link between all of those things, and so many links from the actual power plant, which is the engine, to the wheels, that there has to be programming and control units and extra components and blah 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 blah. And we've got a motor on each wheel. You just have a control for that motor.
Yeah. Well,
so that's instant. That's everything operated by that single motor. And the fact that you can have that layout opens up everything to even more possibilities, even more capabilities for vehicles now.
Well, and I just thought the big issue with some of these things becomes the fact that if you've got this big monster vehicle, well, then you can put the big monster batteries in it, and you can, so then suddenly that, I want to be able to go more than 300 miles or something. It's like, well, that's not an issue, because we're going to put the biggest battery you can ever put in a vehicle because we have the room to do it, and it just works. And I'm thinking,
well, that's the other thing as well. Like, you get an Escalade-sized vehicle, but you've only got the space of a Yaris inside, because the actual size of the vehicle is made up by batteries. But they're getting smaller as well.
Exactly.
They're getting smaller. I think all it is now just a matter of the actual charging of the batteries, just the green energy that goes into it. And like we've said before, if we could get that electricity to be green, and then we can start going to hydrogen, because the problem we've got is lithium. Lithium is to electric car what crude oil was to the internal combustion engine.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, from what I understand, it's relatively more concentrated to fewer regions of the world. And again, like it always seems to be, these regions are rife with corruption and sometimes war, and there's people going to be exploited to get their hands on this resource to make batteries. So I think the better and the quicker we can get let's say a different option to just purely having a battery in there that we have to charge every day would be better.
Hey, I got to say, I got really excited, moving on a slightly different direction really quickly here, but it's kind of fun. I found this video called Hollywood Cars. I put it up into the notes, and I don't know if you saw it, but it's basically the guys who provide the cars for pretty much every Hollywood show. And what a cool watch. But it just got me thinking about my brother and Dougie. And Dougie, as you know, does the Smash Up Derby and all these other things. And all I kept thinking was, man, if we could get a body, because they're saying, sometimes they get wrecks, and they had a picture of one, and I can't remember the movie. I'd have to watch it again. I should have wrote it down. But they had a Rolls Royce that they were using, and it was on a Chev body, and they just made it look like a Rolls Royce. Like, they literally fabricated this body for this vehicle in their workshop. And they said they got a mechanic, they got an upholstery guy, they got a painter guy, they got a graphics guy, and And then they have these, but I just kept thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool to be able to get that nice body of my sister-in-law's Subaru and be able to throw that onto something that Dougie's using Smash Up Derby, and it really looks like her car with the washboard thing on the back too.
So this is going back to pranking it then.
Yeah, well, yeah, just what she's thinking. Maybe she's working from home, which I know she is, and then she's her daughter says, "Hey, Mom, have you seen this video? Look at Dougie's new car," and I can just see her sprinting out to the garage to see if it's still out there. And I just think it would be awesome. I mean, I'm like obsessed with this. I don't know why, because it could get me barred from Canada. She'll have everyone she knows waiting for me to come in if anyone goes near her car.
Yeah, well, look, this isn't new. I remember, I forget the model of. I'm not a Ferrari guy. I don't really pay much attention to them, but I do remember that the old Toyota MR2 from the sort of 90s that you could get Ferrari body kits for them, and they would look like a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And I think there was something I saw the other day where somebody had put a Lamborghini Urus body kit on a Toyota RAV4. So it looks like an Urus, but it's only a RAV4. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, each to their own with that.
Yeah.
But,
well, I wonder what Smash Up Derby is going to happen in the summer. I gotta get it on the line to Dougie and find out what's going on with COVID. Are they going to be able to social distance enough to make it worthwhile to go and smash up cars?
Smash Up Derby is to not be socially distant, right? You're trying to get as close to them as you can.
Exactly. You see, this is the problem. So I don't know, but
when I was doing my I think it was in Milton Keynes, but it could have been in the Nottingham part of the training centre for VW UK. But you remember the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift?
Yeah.
I forget the name of the rapper, but he'd got a VW Touran it was green and the Hulk, and it had the big fist coming out the back of it and all the Hulk fiberglass all over it. They'd obviously made a few of them for the filming, and we had one of them in the training school.
Really?
And it was just a bare bones Touran, just a standard 1. I think it might have been the 1.9 TDI, like the base level one. But for the purpose of photograph or editing, the external area of it was as the ones that you saw in the film. Whether it was actually ever used, I don't know, but that we did have one, and it goes to show that you can do a lot with editing, as long as it looks kind of like it.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we could, for the sake of if we got a decent camera and a good editing suite, I'm sure we could put. Yeah. I'm sure we could make one of the Wranglers look like a Hummer H1 or something.
There's a great one for sale right now, and I saw this online. Someone has taken a C5 Corvette, taken it basically apart and turned it into a dune buggy. And I'm thinking, yes. Yeah. I was thinking again, my brother's got 10 acres in the back of his place. I want to just show up one day and be out there just doing donuts in this Corvette in his backyard, hoping to not get near the pond with the manigator in it. And, just having some fun, except, someone might come out with a shotgun. You never know about that, but nice way to meet your brother. Hey bro, how's it going? What are you doing? He'd be saying.
Exactly. Yeah. That'd go down well.
But I thought, who would spend that? And I was looking at the specs of it. There's, it's still got the regular powertrain, 5.7 liter LS1 V8, 6-speed manual gearbox. I'm thinking, that kind of works. Short throw shifter, mild performance crankshaft. I'm thinking,
mild performance in the C5. Yeah.
It says it's got Kook's long tube headers. I don't even know what that means, but sounds good to me. I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it sounds to me like it's just got pipes coming off the exhaust port straight out.
Yeah,
so that's what it sounds like.
High flow catalytic converters. It's like, oh, there we go.
At least it's got those.
But the best part is when I'm reading about this, the best part, it says, contrary to everything else, the inside cabin looks just like a Corvette. So the outside's a dune buggy, you get into it, it's just a Corvette. I'm thinking, now we are rocking.
Yeah. That would be good. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the only Corvette that's ever been able to handle. It's probably the only Corvette that you can actually drive around a corner. So, apart from the new one, maybe.
we were talking earlier about GM and not, you know, how they've got to retool things. That apparently they were talking about bringing out an all electric Hummer pickup truck. Have you been hearing any rumblings about that? There was a little bit.
Yeah, I saw they did the press on the Super Bowl for it, but that's obviously been delayed because of this.
But
I mean, I don't know
who'd buy that anyway. I mean. I shouldn't say that, you know, because
people will buy it. You know very well, people will. But the problem is, I mean, it's like I've got a friend of mine that he's moved back to the UK, and his wife always wanted to have a Hummer while she was here, and then they never got around to it. Kind of because I always talked him out of it. No disrespect, but they're not. Put it this way, they're not the ones that the military use.
Right.
Let's just say that. So people that get that aspiration, they're not like that at all. So anyway, they found a H3, and they wanted to get it and then do a conversion for the headlights and fog light and stuff like that, and take it back to the UK. And you know, I scratch my head. I don't understand. I don't get the appeal of them. I don't understand why. Why they're so.
How's that going to fit on the roads in Nottingham? I remember Colin talking to me about how he got a patrol once, and he was at, I don't know where he went, Lake District or something, and he said the darn thing almost doesn't fit on the road. Like, forget if a car's coming in the other direction, you're going to get taken out.
No chance. I mean, he lives down in Brighton, so he's that's relatively rural. I mean, he's not far from London, but then there's congestion charge, and that's when we get on congestion charge.
How much would it cost to fill the tank on that thing? It's not very aerodynamic. Imagine what he's going to spend in the UK on petrol.
I get no. I don't really get any joy in saying it, but I would never ever own a Hummer. In fact, I know one guy that owned an H2 back in the UK.
Yeah.
And he used to have it because it was always getting petrol in it because it was constantly needing to fill it up. He used to have a little lackey, as we call him, a little friend that has to fill. He'd sit in the car because in the UK you sell fuel, and he'd make his friend get out and fill it because he was just constantly filling it up. He was sick of it. He must get tennis elbow from filling up the car.
Oh man,
I don't get it. I don't. What the electric one will be like, I don't know, and we'll probably not see many of them anyway.
Yeah.
If it ever comes to pass now, but it'd be interesting to see. But I just hope that they do something with that awful styling that they did on the H.
Oh, I'm sure.
Obviously,
I'm sure it'll stay looking like that.
Don't look that way. You know? It looks the same as that. And I just don't get it.
I kind of laugh saying, you know, I don't know who's going to buy a Hummer, you know, an electric Hummer, but you know, I can actually think about it because I'm thinking if I had the opportunity to get an electric Wrangler, I might actually do it, right? So I'm thinking if you really love the Hummers and there's a group of people who that's their aspirational vehicle, maybe it fits, and who knows? And again, same kind of thing, right? If you've got a big chassis, it's going to work pretty good. One of the last things, though, I want to touch on. I know you got to get back to work and you got stuff to do. Is did you see that the head of the chief design dude over at Hyundai, Luke Donkervolk, has he's resigned. He stepped down.
Yeah,
I thought.
I know, and it's
that's huge.
Is to be. I'm not an insider in the slightest bit of imagination, but that guy is obviously to thank for the reason that the cars look like they do now.
Yeah,
I mean, you go from, was it like 2006 or 7 or something? You look at a Hyundai or a Kia from that time, and then look at an Audi, Bentley, and at the same time.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, you can see where the inspiration came from. There's a reason that the Hyundais start to look like they do now. There's a reason that I would have no issues and I did have no issues putting a Sportage on my drive. There's a reason for that. And this guy was obviously, if not the only, certainly a major player in that transformation that they did of the brand. It's crazy to think what an individual can do. But, you know, artists are like that, and I think that's the only way to look at somebody like that is as an artist. And there's no reason to not say that vehicle design isn't an art form, because it is.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where things go with Hyundai and Kia. And of course, it's an interesting time for all of these brands to sort of reshake things up a little bit and think about things a little bit, I think, as everything.
Well, yeah. And you'd have to say that you're dealing with this guy is a very, very educated and he's been through the trade and he's been through the whole industry doing what he does. And the company of Hyundai is a huge company.
Exactly.
And you would think that between them all, there's been a contingency plan and a succession plan.
Yeah.
You would think so. Because otherwise the next generation of Hyundais and Kias are not going to be the same.
No.
They're not going to be as desirable, shall I say.
They keep saying they've still got some formula tweaking to do, and let's hope they can keep their eye on the prize, because they've really definitely got it to where needs to go.
It's funny because I always, nobody ever took Hyundai seriously. Certainly not in the UK. It was not. It was not. No one aspired to have a Hyundai at any point in the UK when I was there, really. But I remember when I just started my sort of adult training with VW after finishing my apprenticeship. There was one of the technical trainers there, and I forget his name now, but he was notorious for being so strict.
Yeah.
He was really, really strict. So some of the trainers were sort of there to teach you and educate you and make sure that you passed the course so that you could then apply what you'd learned in the workshop. This guy really was, and there's nothing wrong with this, but he was quite the stickler for making sure that if you were going to pass, it was because you passed, not because someone helped you on the test or the quiz. But he left to Hyundai, and nobody could really understand, or I certainly couldn't understand at the time. And he was quite blunt in his opinion of, these guys are going places.
Yeah.
He obviously saw it that he's like, no, these guys are going places. They know how to make cars. They make good cars. And he was going to be a technical trainer there. And I think he was taking quite a senior role. So I was quite happy at the time, because I'd never actually had him as a trainer. And I'd always been told that he was not good to have as a trainer, because he made you feel like you knew nothing. But maybe I'd have reacted and responded quite well to that. Who knows? But I always remember him going and thinking, why would somebody leave VW to go to Hyundai? But see where they are now. He obviously knew something. He was obviously ahead of the curve. And that was probably a similar sort of time to the designer having left Audi.
Yeah.
This guy
we're
talking about now. So they went through a massive change, and they're still going through that. And they are now a vehicle that people would happily drive.
Yeah. Glenn, we got a lot more to talk about, but we'll pick it up on our next podcast. As always, lovely to be able to sit down and have a conversation. If you want to, you have been listening to PowerWorks with Glenn Power from PowerWorks Automotive. If you want to get in touch with us, Podaholiks with a K at gmail.com. Go and check us out on the webpage, www.podaholiks.com. And of course, I don't know how you're listening to us, but you are listening to us on a feed. Give us a rating, drop us a comment, let us know what you think, and above all, share the link. It's that simple. Thank you very much for listening. This has been the PowerWorks. You are listening to Podaholiks.